All this stuff you see out there, the hatred directed at the president, the criticism of the president, I hope people understand that's not aimed at him. It's aimed at us.
Well, I'm talking to Gary Bauer, who has run for president, who has headed up the Family Research Council. He has been asked by President Donald Trump, I'm going to read this, to head up a U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. This Gary Bauer is a determined warrior. And I want to be sure you understand something. The man I'm about to talk to, now, don't miss this. He cares about you. He wants what's best for you as an individual. Whether you're a minority, doesn't matter what race, doesn't matter what religious background, or if you even have one. He wants what's best. And he has been a fighter. He served 8 years with President Ronald Reagan. And, that was quite a change. Here I was a Southern Baptist, and we had a Southern Baptist Sunday school teacher, a wonderful Christian. But I'm going to be honest with you, and many of us, including Billy Graham, including many pastors, many leaders in his own denomination, knew he didn't have the strength. We had to have somebody else, and Ronald Reagan was that person. And there wasn't any question about it. Gary Bauer served with him. And Gary, I want to welcome you to the stream today. Just thank you. What causes you to be so determined to never give up, that we receive continually the blessings that only freedom offers? Why are you so determined?
Well, first of all, James, what an honor to be on the show with you today and to have an opportunity to talk to people of all backgrounds, anybody that loves this country. That's who, as you said, we want to talk with today. James, I don't think I've ever told you this. Way back a gazillion years ago, I was growing up in a blue-collar home. My dad and I were watching TV. Barry Goldwater was running for president. He went down to a horrible defeat. But before the election, a guy gave a national televised speech for him. And that guy ended up being Ronald Reagan, who at that point was an actor. And I turned to my father at the end of that speech by the actor Reagan, and I said, Dad, Goldwater's not going to win, but this guy Reagan, I think he's going to be president someday, and I'm going to work for him in the White House. James, my father looked at me and said, Gary, you're nuts. And fortunately, my dad was able to visit me in my office in the West Wing of the White House just a couple of years before he passed away. James, looking back on it, I don't even know why I said that, but I believe God laid that on my heart. God was telling me how I was going to be used in public policy. And so for years, I first of all strove to do things that would get me in touch with Ronald Reagan, and all the decades since. Every time things have gotten bad, every time I've gotten discouraged, I think back in that day in our living room in Newport, Kentucky, and when God laid on my heart that I would work in government and public policy, and that's what I'm going to do until God takes me home.
Well, I have an idea that when it comes to the current president, you didn't have one of those visions from God, just like I didn't. We probably would have said this is the last person we're going to be involved with. And yet both of us have been very actively involved at his invitation to sit in front of him from the Oval Office to all the different rooms. I've never seen a president really treat those committed to God, religious leaders, and do what's really best, not for a party, but for the people. I have never seen a president, a national leader, give so much earnest attention to him. Would you agree it was kind of a shock to us, but you've been amazed at what you've seen?
I would agree completely, James. I mean, look, as I said, I loved Ronald Reagan, and he was a good man. God rest his soul. He believed in a lot of our values, but a lot of Christians, including me, were naturally attracted to him. President Trump was a little bit more of an unlikely object of our loyalty, but it became clear really early on that President Trump, candidate Trump, and then President Trump cared about the issues we cared about, admired American Christians for the kind of stands we had taken over the years. And I think the other thing that, at least for me, jumped out, James, this guy's a fighter. I mean, the president knows how to take a punch and he knows how to throw a punch back. And I know that a lot of us struggled about, who we were going to support. And I had a couple of other candidates that I liked initially. But when I looked at the Bible, I saw examples over and over and over again where God chose unlikely people to be his warriors, to stand for him. There are moments when it takes somebody like that. And I believe that's one of those moments we're in right now in the country. That was the case in 2016. It's the case right now. And I believe these years are going to determine whether this country will remain a shining city on a hill. I think President Trump understands that. I know you've seen it. I've seen it. I know the man's heart. I've seen him pray. And I think he's exactly the leader we need for a time like this.
Well, your son is on the staff with Vice President Pence, and he actually, though, was traveling when they were campaigning, and everybody was trying to get to know Mr. Trump. He captured a picture on the campaign plane that showed the president and Mr. Pence, then candidate, praying on the plane that they were traveling on. That was cool. Did that move you when you saw that? Did it kind of catch your attention?
Yes, it moved me, and it certainly closed the deal for me. My son, our son, my wife Carol and I, very proud of him. He worked early on for then Congressman Pence, and then he moved to Indiana and worked with Pence when Pence was governor, and then found himself in 2016 on the campaign trail on all those campaign trips. And one day, as you said, I get this message from our son, and he says, "Dad, I just took this picture in the aisle of the plane that we're on, and I just thought you would really be encouraged by seeing it." And it's a wonderful photo. So I said to my son, "Well, did they know you took this photo?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, I'd love to circulate it." And he goes, "Well, I don't think there'd be any problem with that. They were praying right there in the aisle in front of people." So we started sending that out. And in the world we live in, James, it went viral. Millions of people saw it. And I think it played some role. We'll probably never know exactly how much of a role it was, but I think it was one of those things that people were searching for as they tried to figure out what to do in that election. And I hope in this election coming up.
Well, I remember when it came out, then you and I know this man has asked us not only to pray for him, but to pray with him, and we have so many times. I doubt if we could quickly add them up, and you know that. He has just received us so warmly. You know that I go very forthright when I talk, and I did with him and you know how well he has received it. Even though it might stun him a little bit, take him back, he analyzes, and I've watched it change him. Now, I need to ask you a question. We face, I think, the most important election in my over 70 years that I've been on this earth. And I think the one with Reagan was critical to the future of freedom. And freedom got an extension because of that.
Yes.
I think the future of freedom is at stake right now. What do you want to say to every Christian, every concerned, freedom-loving American about the importance of the election in November? What do you want them to know and consider? And what would you say to them in just a few minutes that would hopefully cause them to focus their prayers, but also their energy and determination to vote right for the future of freedom and the benefit of all Americans?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, James. When this country started, our founding fathers went into Constitution Hall. They gave us an unbelievable country. They wrote those wonderful founding documents, and they found the main ideas of this country not in any book other than the Bible. It was in the Bible that our founders found the idea that liberty comes from God, that we're all made in the image of God, and that we have dignity and value and worth because of that. Doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank, doesn't matter whether you're 99 years old with senility or a newborn with Down syndrome. You've got dignity and value and worth. That is the central idea of America. This country has always believed that. Presidents, Republican and Democrat, have always believed that up until about the last 20 years, when part of this country has gone off the rails. The far left now denies that liberty comes from God. Many of them don't even believe there is a God. And that means if they get complete power, I think America is over. All this stuff you see out there, the hatred directed at the president, the criticism of the president, I hope people understand that's not aimed at him. It's aimed at us. President Trump has been the one force here in Washington, D.C., that has stood for our values, has stood for the idea that liberty comes from God and not from government, has told us that he wants us in the public square. And if he does not prevail and does not get a few more years to finish this job, James, I have no doubt that all the power in Washington is going to come down on the heads of men and women of faith. We already saw it starting in the years of the Obama Biden administration when the entire power of the Justice Department was being brought down on the heads of Christian organizations and ministries, trying to make them subsidize and promote abortion. When Donald Trump took office, he reversed all that. So I think when we vote this November, we need to understand it is our religious liberty that's at stake. It's the future of our children and grandchildren. This is the most consequential election the American people have ever had to face.
Gary, well said. And you have represented the importance of liberty and freedom and really a biblical worldview. And what we're seeing today is not just an assault on a person whose personality sometimes causes all of us to step back a moment, but what he does, his fearlessness, his tirelessness, his determination, his patience to answer the questions of the media that he knows are going to go right out and misrepresent him. We've never known a president or a national leader to spend that much time talking to people who were determined to try to destroy him. But he's done it because he's defending what he's convinced is best. And as he's listened to those of us who are serious about God and about his word and about freedom and faith and the family, he has stood with us in behalf, even in the appointing of justices and judges. It's been amazing how he has defended the things that are precious to those of us who believe a biblical worldview matters and freedom rests on that. Gary, thank you for what you've said. I'm praying that wisdom will prevail in this election because I do believe we've got someone who will fight for what is best for the American people, for faith, family, freedom, and for the future security of the American people. Gary, thank you so much for your courage. Thank you for sharing on the stream today.
Thank you, James. Pleasure to be on the same team with you.
God bless you.